Kansas City Chiefs are entering the 2025 NFL Draft looking to retool their offense and try and get back to the explosive form that we all once know them as. My name is Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and we're going to be breaking down our first 2025 three-round mock draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. Before we get into that, if you like the content that we put out and you want to help the Tracy Take channel grow, easiest way is hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell, and leaving a like and a comment. Let us know what you think of the draft and what you want to see the team do come April. That being said, Ryan, we ended up doing a full three-round mock draft, all 100 or so picks. And as you can see here, we ended up going with Omarion Hampton, running back out of North Carolina. If you don't know who this guy is, Ryan really likes him a lot. He is a Georgia
Oh yeah.
Tech fan himself. He's been watching Omarion Hampton run all over this Tech defense over the past couple of years. And dude's an absolute stud. He's absolutely amazing. If it wasn't for Ashton Genty and his Heisman or almost Heisman-esque performance, Martin Hampton would be the number one running back coming off this class here. And I think looking at this Kansas City Chiefs offense and just looking at their stats too as well, like they didn't even have a 1,000-yard receiver. Kareem Hunt was their leading rusher through 13 games, had 728 rushing yards. They just need more playmakers. They got decimated with injuries with Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown missing. Well, Rashee Rice missing the whole season after week 3 or week 4, and Hollywood Brown not coming back to play with them until like week 16 or week 17. So who knows what this offense could have been? But once again, Travis Kelce, he was the leading receiver at 823 receiving yards, and he didn't even have that great of a season at all.
Well,
So
compared to his standards, yes.
compared to his standards, absolutely. So just trying to find the best overall like player available, I think is going to be a skill position player. It's going to be a route they go, and running back is going to be an absolutely huge need. Ryan, what does Omarion Hampton bring to this Chiefs offense?
Explosiveness, physicality, yards after contact ability. So the one thing is with this Chiefs team, that interior, that offensive line actually was pretty solid. Joe Tooney, Creed Humphreys, Trey Smith, like that's a really good interior duo. It's just those tackles were so bad that they had to kick Joe Tooney out and play him at left tackle. It was just a struggle. And I think if they can get back to a more traditional downhill run game, what that would allow them to do is if they can either get a tackle in free agency or get a tackle later in the draft. We'll talk about Ariante Ursary here in a second. But if they can do that, that would allow that interior to be strong and stout and develop a downhill run game. But then if they can also develop that downhill run game that they weren't able to do with Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt this season, largely due to injuries, then getting Kareem Hunt up to speed as he came in mid-year, that would also slow down some of the pressure on Patrick Mahomes because there's just one extra thing that these defensive lines have to think about. So to me, I think getting a really solid running game going is going to be the best thing that the Chiefs can do right now. And Omarion Hampton, it does that tenfold, I think, for them. His ability to move the pile, bounce runs outside. He has breakaway speed for being 6'2", 225. Like, he's a big back that has a lot of really positive traits. He's a good pass blocker. He can catch. He gives them a lot of versatility, and I think Andy Reid could draw up a lot of great concepts here with Omarion Hampton. And so that's ultimately why I think we went with him over some of the other options, where you go look at the wide receivers that were available, the Alec Eilmaners, Jaden Higgins, like the big outside guys that can go win contested catches. While the Chiefs need that, there are just a lot of those, I think, in this draft. Also, too, you have 2 picks like right there at the end of the second and like very beginning of the third, where I think you can go and get another guy like a Savion Williams, or maybe it's a little high for like a Caden Prather, or a Jack Besh, I think would be in that range as well. So there are a lot of options at wide receiver, where Omarion Hampton is kind of in a tier 2 by himself because Ashton Genty is on a level of by himself.
Yeah.
Then Omarion Hampton, I think, is in tier 2 by himself, and then you have the rest of the guys. So they could go Ariante Ursary. My only quarrel, and we talked about this when we were making this pick, was they just drafted Kingsley Suamataia last year, and to me, they're similar players. Ariante Ursary is like a bigger, freakish guy, where Suamataia is an athletic freak for that size. And he struggled a little bit. And so I just, they already have a project tackle. I expect them to go after maybe getting a tackle like a Cam Robinson or Ronnie Stanley in free agency, or maybe potentially trading for one, rather than drafting another potential project tackle here at 31.
Yeah, it definitely does seem like it just the like if it's Will Campbell, so to say, or like a healthy Josh Simmons, be like,
Yeah,
yeah, no, like that's different than what you're drafting there. But this is to your point though, it's like feel like they've already drafted these kind of guys before. And there's going to be a lot of Ariante Urseries later on that they can go on and draft
yeah,
uh, as well. So it's going to be interesting to see which route they end up going. The more and more I've thought about it, definitely does seem like they'll be skill position players, and specifically, I think running back. Just this is going to be about where these other top running backs go. The reason why then too is if we go on to like some of these later picks that we have them taken here. So this is where you have Jack Nelson, offensive tackle. Then they also take Gunnar Helm as well, tight end, start to replace Travis Kelsey. But there's also a bunch of other guys that they could have taken as well. I think just go in a little bit of a different order. This is about that same time as what we were just talking about, though, but just a couple picks before 63. Jalen Royals, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, and Tay Felton were all taken. So
yeah,
it's like those guys could absolutely like if they fall a couple of positions, they could also get some of those receivers as well. Or they have these 2 second round picks here. They can trade up and go and get the guy that they want here. And so there's a lot of good second round talent, very similar to like to how they got Rashi Rice. But Jack Nelson here and Gunnar Helm, they both of these guys addressing specific needs, just as we talked about with tackle. Jack Nelson would come in and can be a development guy, just throwing as many darts at the dartboard as you can to try and build that youth, build that consistency. But then Gunnar Helm as well, great career at Texas, really start to prepare for life post Travis Kelsey when it comes to that
yeah.
tight end position.
Yeah, and just what I like about the Jack Nelson pick specifically is this is a guy that has played left tackle for like 3 seasons in the Big Ten. Like he's gone up against the JT2 Molowows, Jack Sawyers, Abdul Carters. Like he's gone up against
Yeah.
and had success against some of the top edge rushers in college football at that left tackle position. He's an older guy. He's going to be more mature. I think he'll come in with a good mentality and be uh, much more ready to contribute than like a Kingsley Suamataia, who had really only been playing left tackle at a college level for 2 years at BYU. So that's a much bigger learning curve for him rather than a guy like Jack Nelson that has 4 years of muscle memory to kind of lean on. And so I like that pick. And then Gunnar Helm, I think Travis Kelsey will probably come back for another season. We'll have to see that all that podcast money being flaunted in his face right now probably isn't helping his decision. But I think Gunnar Helm can come in and be a very similar receiving threat for Patrick Mahomes. He was very good at Texas at one in the Sarkisian system of actually like running the routes and following the concepts. But then when things broke down, he was one of Quinn Ewer's first options that he would go to pretty consistently. And so I feel like Patrick Mahomes, who kind of started this wave of creating like at the quarterback position, I think Gunnar Helm would be a good fit to kind of come in there as well. So you kind of mentioned a lot of the other guys. The other thing too is if they want to go with Arianta Ursery in the first, you could swap Jack Nelson for one of these 2 running backs here, Quinshon Judkins or Dylan Sampson, and probably have a similar impact, maybe not quite as impactful as say an Omarion Hampton, but we'll just kind of have to see how things go. So
Yeah.
let's move on to their 3rd round pick here, pick 95. So this is where we went with a wide receiver, not the wide receiver like the big X wide receiver that everybody was talking about. However, Ricky White, he did play a lot on the outside. A lot of speed here. I think you go look. You have Rashi Rice, Xavier Worthy. You add Ricky White into the mix there. That's just a lot of speed to have to cover on the field. And I feel like the Chiefs, like they tried to do this with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. And I feel like if you have Ricky White and Xavier Worthy, 2 young guys that are really solid, I think that would be a better attempt than the Hollywood Brown experiment that was this past season. So I like the Ricky White pick. He's one of like my guys in this draft, just because I really think he can come into an NFL offense and be a contributor right away. But he kind of gets lost in the shuffle of this wide receiver class because he was at Michigan State, performed well, transferred to UNLV, performed really well, but it was at UNLV, and so everybody has a lot of questions about how good he really is, and I think he's a really solid wide receiver.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that kinda goes back to, like, the logic of it, like, why you go running back first is, like, I mean, when it comes to the receiver position, like, you have, like, the Ted McMillan or, like, and Ted McMillan, I think, is a clear number 1 in my opinion, but then Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka, they're like 2 and 3, fighting
Mhm.
for that. Then you have a bunch of guys, like, 4 through 16 that I feel like are kind of this guy. Like a lot of receivers were taken before Ricky White, but at the same time, the two to your point, you watch his film, and there's a lot of good things on film that you'd want to have compared like to him to Tay Felton or Savion
Yeah.
Williams. So it's like maybe you like pass on those guys or just miss on those guys. Well, there's plenty of guys that are similar to what you're going to be getting in the second round, and so I could see Savion Williams falling and Ricky White being taken earlier on, and same could be said, about a lot of those other guys. So that's what's going to be very interesting about this draft class and the skill position players. One of the benefits I think for Kansas City, which is kind of like why for our logic, like go best player available on the board, skill position player wise, and that's why you go running back then the first round. It's I think Omarion Hampton is going to have a better Chiefs career than Clyde Edwards-Helaire is. The last time they took a running back towards the end of the first round, as Omarion Hampton, and you know better than me, Omarion Hampton's was on some not so great North Carolina teams. Like he had Drake May
Yeah.
for a couple of those years, but he was still
The
the stud. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, looking back on it, he was the running back on an absolute, on arguably the best college football team or top
oh,
5 college football team that we'll ever
it's
see.
not an argument that it's top 5, it's an argument whether it's the best ever, but, like, even then, the
Exactly.
fact that
That's
it's
fair.
one of those, like, one of those teams, I
Yeah.
think says a lot about it, but, no, Amari Hampton this past season, North Carolina was awful. They were 8-0 or 9-0 2 seasons ago when Drake May was there, and then they lost, like, 3 out of their last 5, I think, just the
Oh,
team
yeah,
got
you
too
guys
b
beat them
yeah, we beat well,
in
they lost to Virginia the week
yeah,
before, and then they came to Tech and we won 46-42, I think,
you were at
um
that game. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah, yeah. So that was it was a really fun game. Not a lot of defense was played, but no, like I think North Carolina and kind of what Omarion Hampton has shown, like he carried that team this past season, and he was just really solid. And I think the Chiefs would be very lucky to get him there at 31. So I could also see the Chiefs moving up, using that early third round pick to go and maybe make a move for a guy. I had Kelvin Banks falling in my latest mock draft, and so like that could be an option if he's there at like 20 or 19 or 20. Chiefs make a move up to go and get a offensive tackle there. So there's a lot of different options that the Chiefs can go. I like what we did here. Let us know down below what you thought of this Chiefs mock draft. And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.